Hello and welcome. We
Hi.
are. Oh, sorry.
Go ahead. That's all right. Hi, everybody.
Hi.
We're going to give it just a couple minutes here so people can file in for our casual standard talk.
Mm-hmm.
So,
yeah, this is something that we're trying new, where we're working with live stream technology, as it were, to talk about different types of strategies. And today we wanted to talk a little bit about casual standard and exactly the sorts of tips and tricks and things that we've picked up, as it were, over the years. Pardon us, we're still getting everything set up. So go ahead and roll into the stream. Casual standard, exactly the sorts of tips, tricks, and things that we've picked up. You can mute that. Seems like we have a couple of people already in.
Nice.
We're going to give it another minute. Now, as a reminder, and we'll mention this occasionally, but if you have any questions during the stream or things that have worked for you to get standard firing, specifically casual standard, go ahead and write some comments on this video, because we'll try to address as many of them as we can. And hopefully, after this conversation, you might be inspired to reach out to your retail development representative to talk about different ideas for your store specifically.
Awesome.
Okay, we have a few more.
Yeah, still getting some people in here. We'll give them another minute and some change, and we'll get rolling.
As brief introductions, my name is Kyle O'Neill.
Hi, Kyle. I'm
Hi.
Josh Thomas.
Josh?
Yeah.
And we are retail development representatives for our respective regions. Some of you may have received emails with your respective retail development rep. So yeah, if you haven't seen us yet or talked to us yet, this is what we look like. So, all right. Well, I think we can probably get started.
Yeah, let's get rolling on it. We got some people in here. We don't want to be too late on that. So the big overall question, right, that we should always start with, we're going to talk about casual standard. Well, what is casual standard?
Yes.
So in short, it's a relaxed play opportunity that enables players of all different skill sets to kind of explore the most recent sets,
Yes.
Get accustomed to the new cards, whether that be in a franchise player or a new player.
Yes.
Right?
So one thing that we often hear is trying to get the standard community built up, right? And oftentimes what people think of when they think of standard is this competitive environment, right? It's something that players tend to aspire towards. And so what we wanted to discuss today is methods to create a lower barrier to entry for standard and the tactics involved to do that.
Yeah, and the low barrier of entry can be attributed to a lot of different tactics that we employ, right? Like we produce products that are specifically to engage those groups, like the welcome decks, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the pathing that ensues through those. These specifically, the red one has one of my favorite cards, Shock, that's in standard right now.
Okay.
So I'm a big fan of that. It's got one in there for that. But the progression goes into like the Planeswalker deck, right? That has 2 more copies of Shock, right? So it engages those players who played with the welcome deck, get a little bit of baseline understanding of it, know that, oh, Shock does me work every time, in my example, and get 2 more of that plus some little extra in the Planeswalker deck.
So how can we create environments where players feel comfortable showing up to your store, sitting down in an event, and bringing a welcome deck or a Planeswalker deck and using that in the event? Not necessarily a tournament, but something a little bit more relaxed and casual. So that's kind of that's the general thesis of this conversation. And again, as a reminder for anybody who's come in, if you have any comments, any questions that you would like to ask about this subject, go ahead and leave us a comment in the feed on the left. On the right, whichever side it is for you. Over here.
So we subscribe to the casual standard because it's a good introduction for new players, and as we said before, a playground for the franchise players. But we've noticed that the report rates on casual standard are a bit lower than some of the other programs that we have available. So we kind of wanted to, hit that head on, have this live stream, have a conversation.
Yep.
So we're going to talk about the goals. We're going to talk about the tactics of casual standard, how to make it work, why we want it to work, all those intentions.
Yep.
So to kind of start things off, we're going to talk about the goals. Casual standard is great. What is the intention of running casual standard?
Yeah. So we'd like to break down the goals of this into 4 major sections. One is remove barriers, right? Same thing. You want to grow your community. You want more people engaging. So remove the barriers for standard. That's number one. Number two is to then expand your play opportunities, have more opportunities for a wider audience.
Yeah, we want to use those opportunities to then mix our communities. We want to combine those groups, right?
That's number three.
Number four is to push and sell that frontless product, right? We want to make sure the business is healthy, and the heartbeat of WPN stores is going to be the casual new players, the people who are franchised and interested in the casual formats, because that's where you're going to push the Planeswalker decks, the Deck Builders Toolkits, those introductory products, right?
Yep. So frontless product in this case, for those who may not be aware, that's standard product, right? Mm-hmm. So right now that's Core Set 2019, that's Dominaria, and going into rotation, you'll want to be aware of, okay, well, what is currently in standard? That's going to be anything from Ixalan up through Guilds of Ravnica. And so the goal is, if we can grow a relaxed environment around standard, then maybe that will help you move the needle a little bit more on your sales of those standard products.
So let me talk a little bit about the details of these goals for casual standard. So the first one we talked about was removing the barriers for standard. It's all about easing the entry into traditionally competitive formats, especially standard. It's one of the most popular formats that we have, most highly played. People want to get into that, but maybe are a little unsure or want to give some ramp up time. Casual is a good place to do that. It also gives you opportunity to spell perceived costs of getting into Magic. The welcome decks, again, are free to the players, free from us. Planeswalker decks have even lower price point than they had before. It makes it even more accessible to new players who want to get engaged with the game. So those are honestly big barriers that we hear, right? Standard, isn't my favorite, or it's too expensive to get into Magic. Standard's as exciting as it has always been, right? We're definitely ramping it up. I mean, M19 was phenomenal. Dominaria was phenomenal. Like things are going very well for Standard right now. We can go ahead.
Yeah, and for your store, and in general, you can apply any of these theories around the time of a new set release, whether it be rotation or not, because that's the best time to reevaluate what your particular strategy is for standard. And so hopefully, we know we're going to be going into some generalities and general strategies. So remember, you can always call us and have a more specific conversation that meets the needs of your store.
100%. So the next goal was talking about expanding the player opportunities, right? We want to give more people more options to play, right?
Yes.
So we want to, if we want diverse groups of people on our shore, we want to reach out to people who maybe aren't invested in Magic today. We have to diversify our events. And casual standard is, again, should be the most accessible, so it should bring in the biggest pool of people, give you the diverse groups, which ties back into our next point, which is mixing the community, right? You get people, go ahead.
Oh, yeah, I was going to say, so when we say casual standard, something that has often sort of come back in the form of feedback or thoughts or perception with the stores that I've talked to is they're like, oh, that's for new players, right? And it's not necessarily to say that we are trying to promote a new player exclusive experience, but rather something that is more, again, you're trying to mix the community. You're trying to create a community event experience, something that your enfranchised players will want to meet with your or relaxed or newer or less experienced players, so that they can play together in your store.
Awesome. And then the final goal again is to sell out frontless product. As I was saying before, the newer players are going to be more interested in the Planeswalker decks, the Deck Builders Toolkits, people who are really wanting to get invested in the game. Those are great opportunities for you to guide those players through your events, give them direction into casual standard, and other formats and events they may be interested in.
Yeah, cool. All right. So now, before we continue, we'd like to see if we can't address any of the questions that may have come in, or if you have any additional thoughts, we'd be happy to address those too. So let's take a look. We have a message from Chris. We have been giving Planeswalker decks away for free to new players. They are affordable, and we can write it off on our taxes. It helped us get new players in the community. As far as taxes and such, you'll need to reference your local tax law because we're not experts on that. But I mean, if that's an approach you want to take, I think that certainly is fine. Now that's let's see here. So Planeswalker decks. The question is, do those players then take the Planeswalker decks and come back to your store and play with them, or are they taking them home and doing some more kitchen table type play? That's the real question. So hopefully, if you are making conversions, right, you're getting the new players in with the Planeswalker decks, you can then encourage them to come back and participate in some form of structured event that is separate from maybe your traditional Friday Night Magic.
Yeah, and we'll dig into the tactics here in a little bit about some broad strokes about what we think is great for improving or promoting casual standard, pushing it. I think that's awesome. Again, like Kyle said, make sure you check your local tax laws before writing anything off. But no, I think that's awesome.
Great. And Chris says, good, they come back and buy packs, which allows you to teach them, and then they come back to your Friday Night Magic as well.
Beautiful. Yeah, the overarching thing is we want to make sure that, events, people have the positive experience, but the goal of those events, right, is to have those players come back. That's the long and short of it, right?
Yeah. All right.
Cool.
No, fantastic.
We'll give it another couple seconds here. See if anybody's got any last minute questions before we move on to the tactics of casual standard. Again, broad strokes, we want to make sure you talk to your individual retail development representative so they can have that one-on-one conversation with you about what works for your store.
Yeah.
Everybody's different.
Yeah. Looks like it didn't quite work for Aaron's store, which, again, your mileage is going to vary, right? Different regions just have different levels of success with different things that they try. But the thing is that you're trying,
Yep.
right? That's the good thing. That's what we want to encourage.
Right, and this is a good opportunity for Aaron to get in touch with, whether that's me or whomever their representative is, get in touch, talk about details about the store, what they've tried, what worked, what didn't,
Yep.
And evolving upon that.
Okay. I think we can move on.
Yeah, let's do it. So let's talk more about, we talked about the goals, what we want out of casual standard. We need to talk about how we get there. What are the tactics for casual standard? So again, if I'm your rep, schedule a time so we can talk in greater detail, but we're going to give some general overarching details about tactics for it.
So I think so the three main buckets we're going to try to address here is accessibility, right? Trying to keep the events accessible. How you communicate what casual standard is to your players, whether they be new players or to your experienced players, and then how do you promote it in general. So let's see here. To start off, we'll be talking about accessibility.
Right. Accessibility, again, it kind of ties into reducing the barrier of entry. You want to encourage welcome deck or Planeswalker deck use. The newer players are going to be interested in that, but also encourage deck tests for your enfranchised players. Like Kyle was saying, this is not an exclusively new player event.
Yeah.
It's meant to engage your community, so make sure your community is welcome there.
Yeah, so picture, if you had an event, maybe it's your Friday Night Magic, but maybe it's something different, right? Maybe it takes place an hour before your Friday Night Magic and enables your casual players to come in and get some more structured support, right? They can hang out, play with the cards that they picked up from your Planeswalker decks purchase sales, and then allows your competitive players to sit down with the newer players and say, here, let me walk you through this, and then also allows them to get a couple of reps in with their deck before moving into the big tournament or what have you, right, for something like Friday Night Magic.
Absolutely. It's all about that player pathing, right? And make sure those communities are engaged, which again ties back into mixing the community. Like these tactics ideally hit all of these goals, right?
Yeah.
So in that mind, a flat price structure is always something we recommend for casual events. It encourages participation over performance, right?
Yes.
We want people to enjoy playing the game, right?
Yes.
Participating in the community, participating in the events should be paramount to that. So focusing on ensuring that is the case with the goals in mind. Flat price structure is always our recommendation for those casual events.
Yes, if the only event option that you have available to your players is something that's more competitive, right, as we keep saying, something that has something on the line, right?
Mm-hmm.
Somebody wins X packs for placing so very well,
Mm-hmm.
And you don't have options for them to just come in and play what is more like kitchen table Magic, then you kind of you lose that opportunity,
Mm-hmm.
right? That rung on the ladder for progressing a player through the various stages of their skill levels. And keep in mind, when we talk about kitchen table Magic, we're keeping this separate from something like Commander, right? Which will definitely still be happening in your store, but this should be a gateway for players who want to engage with more structured, organized play.
Yeah. And we talked a little bit about Cybertation earlier. It is an exciting time. The format is fresh. It's ripe for testing, honestly, right? That's your engaged players are going to want to practice with their new decks. They're going to want to try out new things. So giving them the space to do so is important.
So it looks like we have a question here. Let's see here. Sean says, during new sets, there's a clear chain of progression from the open house to pre-release. What would you suggest as a means of progression in the middle of a set? Great question. I'm hoping that you're organizing Friday Night Magic at the very least, which is that whole time between set releases, and then of course Standard Showdown as well. Now, Standard Showdown has historically been something that a lot of stores advertise as a more competitive event offering, but that doesn't mean that you have to have it be that way, right? If you wanted to, you can apply the Standard Showdown model, right, and the prize structures, and have that be your casual opportunity for players as well.
Or events that you create on your own. You're not restricted on only running our programs for promotions. You're free to run whatever events you would like. If you want to do a new player event and open house isn't on the books for another couple months, you can still run a new player event for your store. Still direct new players that way, still have the casual events to point people to. Having a robust event calendar is awesome. It really helps with figuring out where to put people when. So I can't recommend having your event calendar planned out and including those casual events in it.
And also league, right? When we're talking about, if you're referring to progression, right? Progression for newer players, for example, right? Because open house progresses to pre-release. That's pretty straightforward. The rest of it would be, if they join league, then they have access to little bits of cards over the course of a month, right? And they can build upon their collection bit by bit. That's also a nice community mixing opportunity. And then at the end of the league, then you have the rest of the season, right? You have Friday Night Magic and Standard Showdown. And so if you have a progression in terms of maybe there's a loyalty-based system. Like if you show up to X Friday Night Magics or X Standard Showdowns, you receive some sort of reward at the very end. Or maybe it's just you just market it as your community gathering. These are all good options.
It's awesome. So we talk about the accessibility, but another important thing about having that accessibility, having these events, is communicating. That those things are available. So whenever you have somebody come into your store, engage with them, interact with them, see what they're looking for, what they want, what they need for their events. And when it comes to our games, we talk about player pathing, just answering that question, but guiding them through that player pathing, where somebody comes in your store unsure of what to do, give them the welcome deck, teach them how to play, make recommendations on what you think where they should go to that makes sense for the player.
Have a plan in place for each player along every stage of their experience.
Another good way to communicate it is I've seen a lot of stores, at least that I've worked with recently, as well as some of our coworkers here, but including an event calendar in welcome decks, or including the event calendar like present on the tables, or in Planeswalker decks, like those newer player products, so they can be engaged with your calendar, know that you have events going on, and be sure to include Casual Standard on that list so they know where they can go and give them direction to do so.
If you don't have the structure in place for people to find, then they won't find it, right? And you won't have that opportunity to sell it to them, to sell that experience to them. So I think that's great. Having goodie bags with the event calendar and maybe a description of what it is may convince some at-home kitchen table players to be in-store kitchen table players. Right, for example.
Love it. It's like Aaron's got other events drops your entry into our store championship. I mean, it's pretty cool.
That's great. If they attend X events or an event or however many you decide, and that earns them some sort of some privilege to a cool event at the end of the season. That's great.
And that also ties into our next topic, which is going to be promotion. Like we can talk, communication, how to get the information out there. We can talk about what the events need to look like, but we need to promote those events in some capacity. So like I said before, schedule the Casual Standard on a weekly basis. You have the Wizards event, the store and event locator, which is free advertisement from us. Players can look up their zip code of their city, their state, see what's going on when it comes to Magic in their area. And if they see your store's got a place where they can, enjoy a casual game of Magic, whether it's test a deck or if they want to try out Magic for the first time, they know that your store is a place to go to do that. The other thing that I'm a really big fan of is actually posting advertisements in spaces where people spend their free time.
Yes.
So people, we can go into the third place theory about people, their first place being their home, their second place being their work, their third place being where they spend their fun leisure time. That could be a movie theater for people. It could be a library, the
It could
mall.
be your store.
Or ideally,
Yeah.
your store.
Right.
So placing advertisements in those places where people spend their free time can help you get crossover from those environments.
Yeah. So we've seen sandwich boards, posted in malls, in busy locations. I came up with the concept of sort of equating it to those guitar lessons, right? You see a flyer and you see a little tear off, for more information. Why can't your event experiences for newer players, start there, right? Because then you have access to the parents who might want some sort of social activity for their children, or just a passerby that says, maybe I do want to try something new. I've heard about this magic thing and I'd like to see how it goes. And if you have this casual event experience available that is more accessible to the broader community standard because that product is more accessible, then you have a better opportunity for those players to mix with the rest of your player group.
Right. We're talking a lot about spheres of influence here, right? We post our advertisements in our store, we post them on store and event locator. These are people who are going to be observing that are going to be people who maybe are interested in Magic already, or have some side of inclination about it. So putting things in, the libraries, the schools, all those other places, again, reaches out of that sphere that you have that influence over to try to draw in more people. To build your community, you need people. So we need to bring them in through reaching in avenues we haven't done before.
So let's see here. I wanted to take a quick moment to give you some time to ask some more questions if you have them, and we'd be happy to address those too. So far, so we've covered, while you're thinking about any questions you might want to ask, we've talked about the goals of Casual Standard, right? Those being to remove barriers, to expand upon play opportunities, and to mix the community, and ultimately, by doing that, to sell more frontless product, right? So those are the goals there. And then the tactics include making things more accessible, right, through various means, improving the way in which you communicate what Casual Standard is and what it means for your general community, and then of course how do you promote it, right, outside of the normal means in your store.
Looks like don't have any questions coming in, so let's.
That's fine. Keep them coming, and
keep them coming.
We'll address them as we move through this.
So we talked about accessibility, communication, promotion. There's actually a couple other tactics that I think go under the radar for a lot of people. And those ones are again we hinted at a lot, but engaged players are just as welcome as anybody else. So we should make sure that the space is comfortable and inviting to them as well. But also focusing on the fun of playing Magic, right? Those are two big tactics to make sure Casual Standard works. So we'll go into the details of each of those. Again, the enfranchised players, they're engaged with the game. They love the game, ideally, and want it to be successful. They're going to be engaged with your big events, but having them in your casual events can get that cross-pollination with your newer players or people interested in other formats. So having ways to entice those enfranchised players is so important. You'll have pillars of the community, we call them, who want to come out and help the new players or be involved with that. That's awesome. Great to have somebody like that in the store.
Yes.
But it doesn't mean we shouldn't try to get more people involved in that, right? So we can do it in a couple different ways. Early bird specials for events. I talked to a lot of my retailers, say, try running standard, an hour or two before your standard F&M, and have that set up as a casual event. Invite all your different players, maybe have a reduced entry for Friday Night Magic if they participate in the Casual Standard event. That can help get the engaged players interested in playing beforehand, get them in your shop more, mixing the communities.
They stick around longer. That's a good thing too. Empower your enfranchised players as well to be advocates for your store and for Standard as well. And however it is you would do that, through recognition rewards or
and the recognition awards are great, like coming from the store, like somebody who's really engaged with the community, like award them for that. But that can also come from players as well. A tactic that also seems to work pretty well for engaging and mixing those communities is having player voted awards. So things like most improved, most helpful, having somebody that's most creative, like those, having those be in the players' hands helps them build that community that you want. When you're designing those, I just want to call out to make sure that they are directed to both the new players as well as the enfranchised players, so it draws them both in. It's an important thing to make that distinction for. It's honestly a good opportunity to use some marketing materials we have on the WPN website. So if you haven't checked out those materials, give those a sweep. They're updated regularly. So I would say at minimum, check them every set release to see what's new, what's happening, because that is frequently being looked at.
Yeah. One other quick note is, as I'm sure you probably understand, a lot of the Magic players that you have already firmly established in your store really enjoy challenges, right? They enjoy being challenged. So having this casual standard opportunity be something that you can test them on, like build a, let's see here, challenge people to build a sweet tribal deck, right, and bring that to your casual standard event opportunity, for example, and have maybe rewards based on that, or otherwise, right? That way you give your experienced players something that they can try, and that might help if there are any feelings of, oh, my deck can't compete with with the most experienced player's deck, might even the playing field a little bit.
Yeah,
be a fun challenge for everybody.
And that challenge can actually transcend formats, right? You probably have modern or legacy players or commander players who're like, well, I don't want to play standard. Well, offer that as a challenge to them. Tell them, well, standard is a challenging environment. There's a lot of fine tuning involved when you get to like the higher echelon of like playing the game. So challenge those players, to engage with the format, because as I'm sure you guys know, it's a lot of fun.
And challenge them to engage with your casual and newer players as well, right? In that setting, because that's going to allow for more play in general, right? When everybody is able to access the same format a little bit easier, in that sense. And so moving on to that, more or less our final point is
an important
focus on the fun, right? As we were talking about creating challenges and having unique opportunities for players, largely the whole point is to create a comfortable, casual experience that anybody can show up to with whatever cards they happen to have. In particular, for the newer players that have come in for the demos or have picked up your Planeswalker decks, deck builders toolkits, and they feel satisfied sitting down and get across the table from a new friend.
Yeah, the fostering that the community is important, but also having the right environment for the players. Right? Make your place clean, comfortable. If a parent brings their kid in, comfortable leaving them there. It's about the accessibility and engaging with the communities you aren't accustomed potentially to, interacting with on a daily basis. So environment is so important. Also attitude and engagement with those people. We talked about it earlier, but interacting with your players, seeing what their needs are, what their wants are, what they want to learn, so you can guide them through our game.
Yep. If you don't have a standard deck that you can play with these players, right, in these event experiences, I would recommend doing that, right? Something fun, something wacky. Do something that brings out the spirit of the inspiration, right, for these players, something that they feel that they can connect with you on. And that kind of helps add to the challenge.
It does. Here's a personal story. When I first started playing Magic, I went to a local game store. I had somebody I was seeing was really engaged with the game, so I'll give it a shot. And I played my first day playing Magic, played with the store owner, and I went to that store every day for 5 years.
Nice.
Basically, I lived in that store. So as the example stands, engaging with your players can give you loyalty with your players, right? Interacting with them is so important to develop that the player has trust in your store. They want to be engaged with your events. They want your store to succeed. So engaging with them is one of the most important things I think you can do when it comes to the new players.
Yeah, so these events should go above and beyond just the traditional, competitive environment to be more of a community-focused opportunity.
Because I mean, we'll be honest, events are awesome. They're great. They're super fun. But the intention of those events are for players to come back. So if your new player doesn't come back, there's opportunities for our experiences to grow, for our tactics to develop, and a great opportunity to have conversations with us about what we can do to get there.
So it seems like things have been a little quiet on the questions. So if you have any last questions, we'll give you another few seconds to ask that as we start to wrap up. But hopefully this was this subject is something that can maybe help you present a new approach to relaxed, inviting events that have more of a focus on standard, and you having that product be the focus, and provide your players with meaningful opportunities that they can engage with those demo products that you're giving out, the Planeswalker deck products, and just create more opportunities in general.
Yeah, so I think what we want the takeaway from this is to be sure to consider casual standard when planning out your events, your event calendar, make the postings on your websites, either Facebook or other channels, in store. Make casual standard a part of your lineup, because that's going to be something that draws in those new players, something to engage your existing players, especially like we said, set rotations coming up. It's going to be time for Bruin, so they're going to want the space to do it. So hopefully that is taken away from this conversation. Again, reach out to your retail development representative. If I'm your guy, awesome. I want to get to know you better. I want to get to know your store better so I can further develop these tactics to make sense for your store.
Yeah, we're here to help. And so, in conclusion, I'm Kyle O'Neill.
Josh Thomas.
And we appreciate you for tuning in. And hopefully we get to hear more from you. And if you have any more questions, reach out to us. We're happy to talk. All right, thanks so much.
Bye, everybody.
Goodbye.